I'm not really saying that sleet as as weather. I mean, Tim, you have sleet in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but
Yeah, well, I'm not. Yeah,
like,
I'm not like. I don't think anyone's a fan of them, but I'm just saying that the people who say that sleet should be banned, like, first of all, like, how are you gonna ban a weather, right?
I
Like,
mean,
that's my
we've done it
first thing.
before. Like, I mean, I'm not sure how traditional how knowledgeable you are in traditional Maori folklore, but we did beat up the sun once.
Oh shit!
Okay. Yeah. No.
So, and I mean, I'm open to doing it again for another weather phenomenon. It's it's on the table. It hasn't been removed yet.
Okay. So, how would we go about beating up sleet then?
Okay, so for the sun, dug a giant pit, made a net to throw on top of the sun to pull it down, and then beat it with Maui beat the sun with his grandmother's jawbone.
Okay.
So
I could probably get a jawbone.
who's got a grandma? Yeah,
I've got a grandma. Yeah,
I mean, both
could
my
get
grandmas
grandma.
are dead, so that's like step one
yeah,
is
I mean,
finished
both
already.
of mine were cremated, so
My
no
grandma's
jawbones.
going strong, but I don't know.
I didn't
maybe
think
we
of that.
lend
Yeah,
a
actually,
jawbone.
one of my grandmas was cremated, but was cremated. But I think no, I think we have one grandma jawbone. We could go with that.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
cool. Right.
We're doing it.
Okay, well, we
Okay.
only need one. I
Okay,
mean,
cool.
multiple would be good.
It
That's
would
true.
ideally.
We could all be armed.
Welcome everybody.
Or be jaw.
It's Red Planet. It's episode 41 with your hosts Donald Mule, Sophie from Mars, and Tim not from Mars. Conquest of
From
Dread.
Dread.
Yes.
Tim from Dread.
Dreadful Tim.
I am. Listen, it's me. It's your boy Donald Mule, who's engineering the stream today. So if you have any complaints, shut up. Leave me alone. I'm doing it. I'm doing my best. Other than that, let's kick it off, shall we? And I'm gonna kick it off. Sophie normally does it, but I'm supplanting her today as the kicking off honcho of Red Planet, and I'm gonna say, Tim, what's the most base thing you did this week?
I was trying to think about it, and I honestly, like, this week, I can't even think of anything. I don't know, maybe I'm not thinking hard enough.
No, I don't think you are.
No, I think because I just was working really busy all week, and so I don't think I got too much of a chance to do anything particularly based this week.
That's fair enough.
Which sucks, but like, it happens. It's Christmas season. It's super busy, really busy with not just work, but then also kind of like life stuff as well. But what about my good friend Sophie from Mars? What was the most base thing you got up to?
Let's see. I mean, actually, I said in the TikTok that the most base thing I'm doing is growing mushrooms. So I will say that again as the thing that I'm doing. They're meant to be wine caps, but I think they just shipped me the wrong grain bag, and I'm gonna have to go complain. Complaining to customer service is also not that based. But I got a really cool like time lapse of the mushrooms growing. But the reason I'm gonna have to go complain is like wine caps are meant to be like several inches across and this kind of like brownish red kind of like they call wine caps because they look a bit like wineish color. And I've got these tiny little yellow guys sprouting right now, and they're very pretty, but they're not wine caps. So I don't know what's up.
Yeah.
I also helped someone get into AA. That's probably a base thing to do.
That's extremely based.
Yeah. So what about Mule though? What was the most base thing you did this week?
I don't want to show off, but yeah, basically, one of the most base things that I did this
Not
week.
to show off, but basically, I'm just like a based god. I'm actually the coolest in the whole world.
I'm doing.
I started
of
communism. I made
did.
communism happen.
Yeah, I'm literally Lenin and Kropotkin reincarnated, unfortunately, which means I am a stinky boy. To be honest, that would be what that meant.
That's why he's bald and has the big beard.
Yes.
Actually combined.
So no, I mean, so we had a really big win at the Tenants Union, which was really awesome. And it's just sort of through pontification, really. So it's not really been, I guess, the most base thing that I've done this week, but it's the most base thing I've done over the last month, I guess, which is help our member. You might have heard of our member who was left without gas heating and stuff like that for like 10 days, 11 days. And we basically made the social housing company, who are known as First Choice Homes Oldham, agree within 24 hours of us sending the demands letter. They not only agreed to pay our member £3,000 worth of compensation, wipe all of her rent arrears, but also they've agreed to have a meeting with us at the union to sort of like make them commit. We're going to give them a list of things and we're going to make them commit to basically making their current tenants have better living standards. Do you know what I mean? Rather than focusing on development and stuff. So yeah, so really, really pleased with that. It wasn't just me. It was obviously a collaborative effort. So yeah, did that. And it was really good. It was really, really based. It does rule. I agree. I think Nat is the person.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm just going to double check that. But yeah, it's really, really good. And other than that, I've also been like training other members who've wanted to get involved and do activism and do disputes, handle disputes for members. I've literally been training.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's very best.
Yeah, because the thing is that it sounds really, it sounds really scary when you do it, like when you talk about it and stuff. And like, I guess if you've never done anything like that, but the majority of work that I do with the tenants union is all just like Zoom calls. It's like this. It's like streaming. But it's just like a one-to-one stream, and I just literally say to these people, "God, landlords are horrible, aren't they? You've had a really good time."
Has decided to use his powers for good and no longer for evil.
Yeah. So that's it, and yeah, buzzing, and we have got a show lined up for you tonight.
Actually, you've reminded me of something else I wanted to tell you about.
Yes.
And I feel I may as well tell you during our based section. Before I do, let me ask chat, hey, little chatters, what was the most based thing you did this week? You can tell us.
Yes.
You're already familiar, Mule, you're already familiar with the with my friend's shitty landlord situation.
I am.
And I thought I'd tell you a little bit anonymized about that, because one base thing I did this week was I actually talked to several other tenants in that residence yesterday, because basically they've got this crazy situation. I don't know, Tim, I don't know if I told you about this, but like they've got this wild situation where they've got a landlord who used to be a squatter at that property when it was a squat, who's become a landlord now.
What?
He's an awful weird dude, but like also like
interests have changed.
My friends who live there like have like written like kill all landlords on the walls, and he's like cool based, and he's just like it just does not clock for him. But basically so they've got this crazy situation where like what the landlords are doing has already been illegal like many times over, and what they're trying to do is illegal like many times over. Like they're trying to get them to sign on to like a new contract where they would be lodgers, and they want one of the tenants to be a house manager, which like is illegal because in the UK like you are only a lodger if you live with your landlord, so like that would not be legal. Then there's like they tried to serve them all eviction notices to make them sign this new contract, which is illegal in and of itself because you can't do that. Like that's a revenge eviction. Yeah. Then they also like they misspelled a bunch of I was talking to one of them, and like say it was like 23 Wilson Drive, right? They like served them an eviction notice for like 3 Wilson Drive.
Oh.
So like even if they'd done it right, it would be illegal, but like they actually just fucked up like typing up the document.
It's incredible.
And so it's a comedy of errors. Like the union will absolutely have it sorted like that if they as soon as they push with this. But their biggest issue has been that it's such a large residence that they haven't got everyone on board with like all doing the same action together yet.
Right.
But yesterday I was chatting to several of the tenants, and they weren't quite clear on just how illegal and how fucked up all the things the landlord were trying to do. And I was just explaining to them like, no, you've got this in the bag. Like it's game fucking over for these guys. So like you should definitely like push for honestly, whatever the fuck you want. You could do a rent strike. You could do like whatever action you can. Yeah, you can kick their asses, and you should.
Like they have enough leverage that.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's what I've been telling them to do, and like I think hopefully that is what they will do. Yeah, and I hope that like I think I told like 3 or 4 of the people. Like I say, a lot of people live there, but like I told a bunch of the people there yesterday and got them on board with going on a rent strike. So yeah, that was the base thing I did this week.
No, that is.
Recognize that being run out of my job after visibly supporting our union, which has set off a wave of labor organizing throughout the company, is not about me. Yeah, well, yeah, but also that's fucked up that you got run out of your job for supporting the union.
Yeah.
I hope you get your. I mean, if you want your job back, I hope you get your job back. But I hope you get some kind of justice for that, because that sucks so bad, and also is illegal in most places. One who reads. So I should have said at the start of that. That was one who reads in chat. Just Johnny says, I acted like a human being and told the person who'd lost their pet suddenly to just go home and grieve rather than go through a shift.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty base. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, I would say also Dice Goblin is also saying helped a woman through a mental health crisis at a food serve for my tenants union. That's like 3 based things in one.
Absolutely.
You're doing
the tenants union, you're feeding people, and then you're helping someone through a mental health crisis. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Like you framed that as 1, but actually it's 3. So you get 3 points for that. And another point for being humble, actually.
I think there was a couple others in here. There was some good ones. I love this one. The only positive thing I've managed recently is cancel my Twitter from boring, depressed introvert.
That's base. I'll take it.
I'll take it.
What else? Chaos Merlin has started organizing a trans rights charity gig, which is awesome. Delicate Friend got out of their years-long depression, tidied their room, exercised, and got out of the house, which is great.
It is crazy how much and how quickly organizing is happening. I actually got a Patreon message earlier this week from someone who's saying that like they liked my content and they've started organizing their workplace, and like everyone's on board with forming a union. So like,
I saw
it
you.
is just happening all around
somewhere about that.
In my Discord, I think.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. Like, I think we should look at the big picture here and go, right, the 4 of us, me, Tim, Sophie, and Kira, like we started this in January. We started talking about it about this time last year, really, which is sort of it's pertinent because now we're looking at this. Where we were back then was like, we should do this because hopefully it'll inspire people to go out and do stuff. And now we have a chat full of people who are saying, yes, I've done loads of stuff. And I guess a lot of it might not be because of us, but
with people casually being way more based than us. I just like did 20 things in one thing. It's no big deal. I actually like caught a burning school bus full of children while it was falling into the river with one hand.
I'm always doing that
while I was walking my 16 blind dogs from the shelter that I take care of.
Amazing. No, I love that. Yeah, we should ask chat what they've been doing that's based more often, honestly.
I think so. Chat, be ready to show up based next week.
There's some more stuff coming through.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Let's have a look at
One
that.
who reads says the union is filing a ULP complaint
on
their behalf, which is
nice.
There's what else we got. We got Val of Lesbos donated to a wolf conservation center.
Oh, that's really cool.
We got Just Johnny helping a friend out, helping friends get home. We got Randine covering shifts for a friend so they could drive someone across the country.
That's
Widow
really
of
nice.
Oz helped organize a very small protest against an anti-refugee bill. Nice.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
And if we're going to move on to the news now, but chat, if you want to tell us, or if you're listening to this on the VOD or the podcast or anything, and you want to tell us about what base thing you've done this week, you can get us on social media. We're on red_planet_TV on Twitter. That's probably the main way actually to tell us now, but like let's talk about the news. And if you want to tell us more based stuff, please do. We're always excited to hear about it.
So who
speaking of the
is
news,
reading the first news thing? Because I see it's not been assigned.
I think that Tim should read it.
Okay, cool. All right. So which one was the first one? The first one is okay, so I'll just bring up the thing so I have the notes and the chat and stuff up at the same time.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, cool. So, German authorities raid far-right. I'm just going to pronounce this however I do. It's probably going to change each time I say it, but I'm not German, so forgive me. Or I don't speak German. So yeah, German authorities raid far-right Reichsbürger group over alleged coup attempt. So Reichsbürger is a term for, it's like a loose kind of grouping of German people who, they have this like weird kind of like belief that the old like late 1800s borders of, you know, like the German Empire are still a thing, and that like, you know, like everything since then was like illegal. And they're trying to kind of, I guess, like reenact this former, resurrect this former great German empire sort of thing. And they're super conspiratorial. They're like all linked into like QAnon, all that kind of stuff. But it's like the German kind of thing. And like, you know, they have like some elements of like sovereign citizen stuff, because they're kind of like, we don't respect like the law of Germany as it is now, because we don't we don't see it as legitimate. So it's they're a pretty wacky movement.
Sound like a bunch of guys who are really fun at parties.
Yeah,
most of their
definitely
members
normal,
or their permanent members seem to be like skew pretty older as well. So I don't know. And they're just as kooky as a lot of the other groups around the world. But lots of Nazi stuff, lots of pre-Nazi stuff as well.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the map right now of what they think Germany is, and it's pretty wild. And what's jumping out at me is how much they so one thing that the original Nazis were especially aggrieved about was access to something they called the Polish corridor, which sounds like, I don't know, a Eurosmart film.
I know, I was just gonna say,
but like that's one of the big things.
Corridor of Poles, something. There's something in there.
But yeah, that's in the map that they've drawn up here. So I'm like, yeah, before you got around to saying they were Nazis, I was like, I can see from this map, they are Nazis.
Yeah. Let me try and bring that up on stream real quick. Where is that, Sophie?
Yeah.
I just googled Reichsbürger. It's in there.
Okay, yeah,
Wikipedia page.
I'll grab that right now. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. There's a section for anti-Semitism. That's cool.
Good to know.
Of course, naturally.
Yeah,
naturally enough. Yeah.
So, so this movement is like, it's like a big thing. You know, it's the same as like, I guess like how QAnon have like their little kind of fractions or whatever like that. You know, but so one particular group of them had been spending like months preparing for what they were calling Day X, which was basically a coup attempt. Like they were going to try and overthrow the government. Before they got to do that, though, there was a huge raid. It was just this past Wednesday, I think it was, where the police raided and arrested 25 of them at their little headquarters or whatever. But they were saying they were surprised about their, like, these weren't just guys just sitting around being like, you know, like, we should, you know, like you get those like American kind of like Boogaloo Boys, or even like the people that did that, like they did that raid on the Capitol where they kind of got there and they just didn't know what they were doing, and they were just like, I guess we just kind of mill around and then we go hang out in the hotel lobby for a bit and then we see who's, you know, still open for lunch. But these guys had like a very concrete plan. Like it reminded me a lot of, reading through it reminded me a lot of the stuff from Handmaid's Tale, where the Gilead guys are like, you know, in the flashbacks to their pre-revolution or whatever, where they're kind of deciding who's going to be ministers and all this kind of stuff. Like they had this whole plan about like not just what they were going to do, but what they were going to do after, which is a step beyond a lot of what a lot of people generally get to. you know, like you never really know how much thought they put into that though, because you know, like they could just be like, oh, this guy likes that thing, so he's going to be the minister of blah blah blah, you know, or whatever. As
Yeah.
opposed to like a plan where they go like, okay, well, this person actually knows how to run, you know, like infrastructure and all this kind of things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but so they definitely were more planned. They had thought further ahead than a lot of people had. And yes, so including some of them actually, it was so most of them were German. I think there was like one person from like Russia or something, and but they most of the arrests were made within Germany, but some of them were in abroad as well. Like they did simultaneous arrests in other places of through members that were connected online. So there was like, I think there was like a German guy in Austria and Italy that and a bunch of other suspects. So yeah, what is it? 27 other suspects. So people that they've also kind of found that are maybe affiliated in some way. But yeah, so some of them are like pretty interesting characters. Like there's a 69-year-old former paratrooper was one of the you know, like I guess like the higher ranking members, as well as a 71-year-old member of a minor German noble family, which I think is interesting because I think, you know, it's like this basically was like kind of like these people wanted to go back to the good days of the German Empire with the monarchy and stuff like that. So
I mean, this is the legitimacy that QAnon wishes it's had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just have that guy that they think is JFK's son. Like JFK, but he's not actually that. But this is actually a guy that is related to the
and so he
aristocracy.
wanted to be like, you know, like he wanted to be a like a monarch again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like Weird of Oz is saying in chat, he calls himself Prince.
Yeah.
Like he literally is like even outside of the Reichsbürger movement sort of thing like that, he is a dude that, you know, calls himself a prince
So normal.
for whatever
Just
reason.
so normal.
But yeah. So they had this plan. They were going to overthrow the government, kind of establish a kind of interim government, and then set up like a proper thing and stuff. But yeah, they had equipment and weapons and all these kinds of stuff, and their plan was literally to use, you know, like violence to do it. Like they were you know, and they'd all kind of like, there was documents saying that they had agreed that like killing was going to be a necessary part of this, and that they were willing to do so, and
good.
You know, all this kind of stuff.
Very cool. Yeah. Love to hear that.
Yeah.
That's reassuring.
But yeah, and all the investigators that had been kind of, well, I mean, so they've published a little bit about it. They haven't gone into exactly what, you know, like their whole plan was and their beliefs and stuff, but a lot of the stuff that's been published is talked about how they are like, these guys were deep in like QAnon stuff, a lot of other conspiracy stuff, like all kind of tied into like they were doing a thing which is something that we've seen down here a lot as well, where they will take conspiracies that are popular elsewhere around the world, like, you know, like I mean the QAnon stuff is pretty uniquely American, but then adapt it to local stuff. So it's kind of like they will just insert QAnon into, you know, some German politics and be like, oh yeah, well this makes sense because so and so is a secret deep state agent of blah blah blah, whatever.
Well,
and,
there's a really, so I'm reading Religion and the Racist Right by Michael Barkun at the moment, and he's talking a bit about the structure of the New World Order at different times, like because they believe that all of this shit is like Christian prophecy coming true. They have like they've pinned who they think like the Antichrist is like several times throughout like centuries of discussing it. Like there was at one point like one of the Napoleons, they thought he was the Antichrist or something. Other times like they thought like the Tsar was going to bring in like a holy army and shit like this. And when you read the description of it, it's like, yeah, you can just see like Alex Jones swapping out like Klaus Schwab and like George Soros and whatever instead in this like kind of cast of characters. Like they have a whole they have a whole prophecy figured out, and then like they can apply it to whoever they like.
Yeah, and I mean, like for a lot of these groups, it's like this idea of a deep state. Like these guys were very into the idea of a German and like kind of like a larger European deep state that was like, you know, like kind of in control of everything, and that the current government was just like, you know, like the puppets on the stage or whatever, and that and that they were gonna get in there and clear it out.
Deep state's always wild to me because it's just like, you're talking about like the guys who run the post office or whatever, like the people,
exactly,
shadowy government officials who are there even when the administration changes and they're not democratically elected. It's like, like guys who are like bureaucrats, like what? Like what are you talking? Like
civil servants, like
just civil servants, like just the guy who like reviews your tax form. I guess, like
or like, you know, there's like corporations that can like function as like organs of the state or whatever. Right, it's like none of that is like democratic at all. Like,
the implication for that stuff. I think it's important to point out to chat in case anyone doesn't know, or any listeners in the audience, that when people talk about the deep state, what it actually is and what it's implied to be are two completely different things. As we've just said, it's civil servants, stuff like that. But what they're implying is that it's all Jews. That's what they're saying.
I mean, that is more or less what it always comes back to.
Yeah.
But you know, in Britain, for example, we don't get to vote on who is the new Doctor Who. So Doctor Who, deep state.
Deep state. That's right.
The administration changes. James Bond stays the same. Deep state.
That's right.
The Queen dies and the King comes in, but Mr. Blobby is still there. Deep state.
Deep state.
That's a UK
this is the thing. Like
a
lot of this stuff. And like they do mention a lot in this stuff about like Donald Trump, you know, fighting the deep state. And this is the thing. It's like, you know, it's like, you know, Trump got into the White House, but there was still a villain, you know, if Mr. Blobby was still there. So it's like, you know, now it's like, okay, our guy's in there, but there has to be a reason why he hasn't just done the thing yet, you know, that why he hasn't just made us all princes on earth yet or whatever, you know. It's like, it's because there's still the deep state. And so this is what these guys were kind of thinking. And I saw someone ask why they would document that they, you know, were prepared to use violence and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of the stuff intercepted was their online communications. So apparently they just had really terrible OPSEC, and you know, they were like these, I mean, they were like, you know, older dudes or whatever, and they're jumping on Facebook. Probably they probably got like a Facebook group where they're planning it or something like that. But you know, they were talking to each other about like this stuff, and you know, there was like the paratrooper saying like, you know, yes, I've killed before, and but they were like talking about they were specifically trying to target like police and things like this for their own, like they were trying to kind of get police and army people in on their plot as well. Like they were saying, if we, you know, like if we can get enough on the inside, then, you know, when this happens, we can kind of like they can help us take over and stuff. I'm not sure, like I don't think there has been anything released about if the members were in the police or anything like that. I doubt that they would be very quiet about it if they did. But it isn't uncommon, like in New Zealand and Australia, I mean, in most places around the world, there have been, you know, far right kind of people busted within the army and the police and stuff, and they, you know, sometimes they're just there because they just have far right views and they happen to, you know, be in the police because, you know, like it aligns with their views or whatever, or it aligns with their values, but then you do get, like in New Zealand, Action Zealandia, who are a white supremacist group. They they were sending, like they were telling their young members, like, you don't know what to do with your life, go join the army, go learn some skills, and go, while you're there, talk to everyone in the barracks about, you know, like about our ideas, just stuff like that, you know. So sometimes it is a deliberately kind of a deliberate part of their project.
What I'm imagining now is just like this, like German boomer grandpa, like Googling, how do I build the doohickey that killed Shinzo Abe?
And you can
post it on Facebook instead. Do you know what I mean? As a status, like
he's got one of those like officer helmets with a little point on it, and sitting at his computer, and just like, you know, like
with a proper
Like, what's the
brush
German
mustache,
version
yeah.
of like Dad's Army or whatever? Like
Yeah,
that?
he has huge like mutton chops.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's
No,
like,
I'm
right.
actually imagining just Dad's Army, but it's like German, and they're all like trying to revive the German Empire
yeah.
A dude wearing
100%.
lederhosen and mutton chops like runs at Angela Merkel with like a homemade shotgun that's 90% duct tape, and when he fires it, it just shoots him instead. Like,
Yeah.
I love this funny hypothetical scenario.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's brilliant
is
news.
that everything about the Reichsburgers?
I think so. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, there's not too much else out there now. Yeah, but I guess
Okay.
we'll probably find out a little bit more as it develops. But I don't think there's going to be any more like particularly interesting developments from that. It seems like it's kind of over, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okie
Um,
dokie.
Then in that case, let me tell you about an article that I read. It's not so much a news piece exactly. I'll drop the link in the chat. It's basically something that I thought people would find interesting to read, and that I had an interesting time reading. And I wanted to tell you about it, and then maybe quote a little bit from the ending. So Faizi Ismail wrote in The Guardian this week, "Memo to Just Stop Oil and everyone risking all to save the planet. We need a rethink." And I guess like it's easy for me to like for a title like this kind of get my hackles up, because like I'm very protective of the environmentalist movement and the people protesting to try to like save the planet. But also like it isn't like winning over lots of public favor at the moment. It's very easily manipulated by the media. That said, obviously it's like the media are corporate, and so would be against any left-wing action by definition. So it's like and then as we've discussed on the show before, it's like how much do you necessarily need public approval, if whereas by contrast, like, is the purpose of what you're trying to do to raise awareness to get public approval, or is the purpose of what you're trying to do to sabotage the systems that are setting the planet on fire? And if it's the latter, then you don't need public approval. You just need to like sabotage stuff. But yeah, like Just Stop Oil, I guess, have been doing protests that like have been stopping traffic or whatever, and that raises awareness, but they've been pissing people off. And again, like the media can just like the media are turning against the most like obviously humanitarian and obviously like pro human life cause there is, which is like stopping us from ending all life on Earth. But like, so like, I don't know that there are nicer, better tactics that the media would approve of, right?
Yeah.
But the article makes a pretty good point, which is to do with solidarity with other movements, for one thing. So she says, first, the focus must include maximizing street protest over the. Sorry, maybe I've gone the wrong. Oh yeah, sorry. I'll just read this a little bit. So first, the focus must include maximizing street protest over the climate and supporting wider protests about the cost of living crisis and the war in Ukraine. Both of them tightly linked with energy policy. While direct action over energy is crucial, it was encouraging to see Just Stop Oil and others on the climate block at the recent People's Assembly demonstration over the cost of living crisis. And I think, I mean, like, there's obviously the point when I said before, like, how much do you want like public approval or whatever? The obvious answer to how much you want public approval is like, if everyone loves what you're doing, more people will show up to volunteer in your movement to do more stuff, right? The People's Assembly demonstration was pretty massive, and it was about the cost of living crisis. And like, if you can connect the fact that we need to shift our reliance off of fossil fuels, right, with there's like supply chain issues for fossil fuels right now that's driving the cost of living crisis, so just stop oil, right? If you can connect those things up, then you would have a lot more people supporting what you're saying. So it seems like a pretty reasonable point. Then she said, second, the movement must identify with the rising militancy among trade unions and working people, those who can stop production, whether it's oil and gas or SUVs. This means supporting the strikes over pay and conditions, turning up to picket lines and mobilizing numbers to organize the biggest movements possible. This is starting to happen, and Just Stop Oil is supporting striking workers at the UK's largest oil refinery of Fawley in Hampshire, operated by ExxonMobil, which recorded £17.3 billion in profits over the last quarter. We need more of this kind of action, where the climate movement and labor militancy come together. Persuasive arguments being made for the climate movement to make a strategic refocus on production rather than consumption. And yeah, that's absolutely, it's obviously not about consumer choices. This is because the crisis mainly isn't about consumption. More important, important though that is, it is mainly about the way production is organized, what is produced, and who profits from that production. So that's pretty base. Like that's calling for, you know, for the climate activists to be calling for a change to our mode of production, i.e., we need to end capitalism, as Greta Thunberg recently identified. The protesters are not selfish or reckless, as Transport Secretary Mark Harper claims. They are not extremists, as Suella Braverman wants us to believe. It is those who are blocking change who are the real extremists. Make no mistake, protesters must continue. But by expanding the range of tactics and by making strategic turn towards those who have real power in society, we would become unstoppable. And yeah, I just really like that article, and that's why I wanted to share it. I put the link in chat. Yeah, I think like refocusing on production is obviously is one thing that I think is kind of big news in that. This is kind of why I'm bothering to like read an opinion piece from The Guardian in the news section this week, because I just think that like in terms of discussing what like protest and direct action tactics are worthwhile, yeah, like refocusing on production, I think it's interesting because I would frame it more like a return to focus on production, because actually like a lot of climate activists around the early 2000s were more focused on production and weren't all about like, you have to be vegan, you can't use plastics, you like, it's all these consumer choices. But like the people aren't really aware of, as Malm talks about in How to Blow Up a Pipeline, the green scare, like people like the American government like targeted climate activists and like took a bunch of people out or like sent them to jail for life with terrorism charges. We're using the same powers that they'd gotten from the from 9/11, right? And it's like it's like that was when the focus shifted to being about consumption, because everyone who was pointing out that production was the problem like went to Guantanamo fucking Bay. Like, like so I would say it's like not just like refocusing on production, but like a return to that focus. And also, I mean, it should be kind of common sense that they should be working with people who are protesting like cost of living crisis and whatever.
I don't want to jinx it, because the last time that we did this, we did jinx it and he couldn't come on the show. But we are scheduled to have one of the biggest organizers Just Stop Oil on the show next week. So
very exciting.
You know, hopefully what Sean can do, if he comes, if he can make it, is sort of tell us if this is something that Just Stop Oil is, you know, planning to do. Like I know, like a lot of people have said to me, I've even had it in my Discord, people in my community being like, I'm sorry, but I just think that Just Stop Oil are just ridiculous and and it's like, well, yeah, but you know that they've like shut down oil pumps and you know that they've like shut down like oil, like the supply line of oil and stuff, and then they go, oh, that's really based. Thanks for telling me. And it's like, this is what
the media
happens.
isn't going to talk about that part, obviously.
No. This is what happens when you just read like, you know, the mainstream media and then, oh my God, you formed a reactionary opinion. How did that happen? You know, so that's that, isn't it?
Oh, I've got reactionary opinions all down me.
Got racism all down me.
as Faisy Ismail points out in the article, I'll just restate it so that people don't miss it. Right, this is starting to happen. Just Stop Oil is supporting striking workers at the UK's largest oil refinery in Foley in Hampshire. So you know, like absolutely, these are things that they're already doing, and like there being a block at the People's Assembly, that's based stuff. Like I don't think that this is entirely like a speculative critical piece, because she does talk about things that Just Stop Oil are already tending towards. But it's cool to kind of see, I guess one thing I'm excited about in this piece is just like people talking about how we can do protests and direct action and these kind of organizing better, which is what we're all about, right? So like if The Guardian could spend less time paying TERFs to write like, my child looked at a cartoon animal online and now she thinks she's a boy, and more time like opinion pieces like this, that would be cool, I guess is my point.
No, I think that's a great point. I think that is a great point. Just to touch on that slightly, because I saw Sean at a protest a couple of weeks ago. In fact, it was the same one of the Red Roots Collective, our guest tonight, that they were doing, and he spoke about how when they went to support the striking oil workers, and he said, oh yeah, it was weird. He said he said he imagined it was probably what it was like to be the first lesbians and gays support the miners turning up at the miners' strikes because it was
Right.
like,
Oh yeah.
it was like, you are supporting us.
Yeah.
Why? Like, yeah. So very interesting, but I can't.
Because your enemy is the oil company, and our
Yeah.
enemy is the
Yeah,
oil
yeah,
company.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like there needs to be like that kind of that shift, you know, in people's thinking where it's like, you know, like realizing that it is legitimately just like us against them.
Yes.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
but I do also I like that line that they put in there, which is like similar to what I've said to people before, particularly around like prison abolition and stuff, where they say that like that we are not the extremists, like
Yeah.
what
Yes.
you know, like
Yes.
what we are fighting against is far more extreme. And like yeah, I've
Exactly.
spoken to people about that, considering like concerning like prison abolition, a bunch of other stuff like that, where it's like the people, like, you know, in regards to prison, it's like, you know, we want like actual like community driven rehabilitation for people. You want to lock people up for life by themselves, you know,
Right,
in
that's
solitary
an
confinement,
extreme
stuff
thing
like that.
to want.
Like
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like that is like far more extreme.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that like pointing that out to people in a lot of like kind of, I would say,
Yeah.
like leftist issues, I think can be really helpful, because then people go like, wait a minute, like I have actually been really, I've become accustomed to a certain level of brutality that I never considered, you know?
No,
Like,
yeah, absolutely. I'm reading
Yeah.
like quite a, in many ways, terrible book about climate change right now, but it's like, it's
Mhm.
also, it has a lot of like accurate climate science in it. And like when you read projections of like what the fuck will happen at like 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees of warming, it's like, yeah, I think maybe they're the extremists. I think maybe
Yeah.
the guys who are like, I'm going to carry on making a profit while it becomes like so hot outside that if a person went out there, they would cook from the inside and out simultaneously. Maybe those guys are like, that's an extreme thing to do.
yeah.
Actually, like,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I will then, if we're done with that bit, I'm gonna now
so.
read the next news story, which is pretty cool. It's about our friends down under in Australia. You love it when
like,
I
what is
do
what is
this
he saying?
accent, don't you, Tim? You love this. No, right. I'm gonna stop that. Apple workers in Australia plan a Christmas strike, which is great. I love it when people strike at Christmas.
Yes.
Sophie's still recovering from that accent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you know, this is part of the strike wave that's going on all across the world right now. It's happening in the UK, it's happening in the US, it's happening in the Imperial Core, which is the impressive thing. It's also happening in the Imperial Periphery a lot. But in Australia particularly, we've got hundreds of Apple workers preparing to strike. And the union that they're a part of are the Retail and Fast Food Workers Union, which is the RAFWU. And they're asking Apple for fixed rosters, known hours of works, weekends of 2 consecutive days, and an agreed annual wage rise. And what that says to
Which is like, it's so basic, right?
it
Like,
says to me,
fixed rosters,
yeah,
known hours of work, weekends of 2 consecutive days, and an agreed annual wage rise. Like, these are like standard things that, like, you know, everyone should have.
it sounds like they're on a 0 hours contract, you know, like they're just not allowed, like, you know, you can work for us. Maybe if we need you, if we can be bothered, right? It's just absolutely awful.
Again, though, like Tim just said, like this is the crazy brutality that we've just become completely accustomed to, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like industrial workers won us the weekend as a concept to begin with.
Yeah.
And then literally what's happened, like I'm only realizing this right this second. Like that's how accustomed to this I am, right? Like, but like they had unions. All of that labor got exported to the Imperial Periphery. All the labor in the Imperial Core shifted to service sector in work, which doesn't have any unions.
Yep.
And suddenly everyone has to work through the whole weekend.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What the fuck?
Yep. And not just and a lot of the service sector has to work not just through weekends, but through the night as well, like a 24-hour you know, working kind of thing. And that can just fuck a person up.
Genuinely.
I used to do night shifts in a call center that I worked in, and that was rough.
Call centers are so grim.
Oh, so grim. And literally nothing would happen. It was the most bizarre work I've ever done. Like, you just would not get calls. It's like it's a 24-hour line and just nothing would happen. It'd be just so depressing. You just sit there for 8 hours like, great, this is what I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I always imagined this when I was 8 years old and someone said, what do you want to be? And I said, a vet. Like, yeah, I thought that this is what would happen. Anyway, so what's the strike action? So the strike action is they are planning to walk out of Apple's retail outlets at 3 p.m. on December the 23rd and stay away throughout Christmas Eve, which is usually a peak time for sales of Apple iPhones, watches, and other products.
Which would be like just huge to the company, you know, like that time. Peak Christmas hours, selling. Everyone's getting little Timmy getting an iPhone for Christmas. Not anymore.
No.
Fuck off.
Yeah, fuck off. Why do you need another one, little Timmy? Stop playing into the planned obsolescence of a mass corporation like Apple.
You know where that fucking lithium comes from, mate?
Do you know how many people died for that little fucking battery in your shit phone that doesn't even last for 20 minutes after you wake up and it's 100% charged? You absolute clown. What is wrong with it?
This is like all of the Red Planet hosts crowded around this like 6-year-old bullying them for bad.
It's your
slapping the
fault.
phone out of their hand. Like, you fucking scab.
Yeah.
Fucking scab.
Break the picket line.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna fully boxed iPhone 12 at this 6-year-old, like fucking right in the head.
I'm just gonna real
That's
quick.
how we get communism, folks.
I'm just gonna real quick go through the rest of this because our guest is in the waiting room.
Oh yeah, cool.
And yeah, so they're planning to stay off over Christmas. And in June, Apple workers in Maryland, in the States, became the first retail employees of the tech giant to unionize. So that's really fucking cool. And they started negotiations in January. Sorry, they've formally announced in January they're going to start negotiating with Apple. And yeah, there's also RAFWU have also said that other strike actions that have been continuing from earlier this year will also be escalated, and they're trying to include a ban on iPhone repair and Apple Watch repairs for certain hours in some outlets. And as we've just spoken about very briefly, that is something that Apple makes a lot of money on because they plan for that to happen, actually, in the awful way that they design their products. So there you go. But right, okay, I don't have an intro down for this guest for our next for our guest today, so I'm just going to kind of wing something here. But we've spoken briefly, we've spoken a few times here on Red Planet about the revolution that is going on in Iran, the subjugation of women in Iran, and the movement that has happened as a form of liberation, not just for the women of Iran, but also for everybody in Iran who is suffering under the dictatorship at the moment. And we have actually managed to speak to someone who is based in the UK, who is running a collective. Well, not running a collective. I think it's sort of horizontally, democratically organized. We'll find that out in a minute when we speak to our guest Sohrab. But yeah, they're helping to organize the Red Roots Collective, who support the Iranian women's revolution, the Iranian women's movement. And yeah, our guest tonight is Sohrab, and I am going to bring him in now, and let me see what happens here, if this has worked. Yes, I think we've brought him in. Sohrab, can you hear us? Oh, hello. There he is. Hiya, Sohrab, how's it going?
Good, thank you very much. Hi.
So I just did a little introduction there about the Red Roots Collective, but I've probably butchered it. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what Red Roots Collective do for our audience?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me to your show. And obviously my first language is not English, so forgive me if my English is not very fluent.
No problem.
My name is Thank you. So my name is Sohrab. I'm part of Red Roots Collective, and this is a socialist and ecofeminist collective based in Manchester. A group of Iranian activists started this collective, but right now this collective is not simply for the Iranian activists. It has become, kind of an international collective that people from different nationalities and from different parts are associating to this collective. And we started with the project of building solidarity with the social revolution in Iran. But we know that this revolution will not be successful without the collaboration with other areas in the world. So we're beginning to build a kind of an internationalist project to involve other activists and other projects around both the region in the Middle East and North Africa, and more than that, the situation, for example, in Greece, the situation in China are also very interesting at this moment. So, but we are, in the first steps of building this collective. I hope that this has clarified.
Yeah,
it's your introduction.
Honestly, yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, because I kind of knew the basics because I from the tenants union. You're a member of the tenants union as well, and we came down to support you during your protest the other week. So I knew that you guys were pretty awesome and pretty based. But yeah, just absolutely incredible. So when we're talking about sort of solidarity with the revolution that's happening right now in Iran, can you talk to us a little bit about how you're building that solidarity and what kind of solidarity potentially we could show with the movement there?
Yeah. So as you know, in the current situation in Iran, many neighborhood committees and many strike committees in different regions are trying to self-organize in this revolution, and we have a big community of Iranian diaspora also outside Iran, which they are also have been active during these previous months to do some solidarity actions. But first of all, let's distinguish between two kinds of solidarity. First, the symbolic actions of solidarity, like, for example, signing some petitions or writing some statements or holding a public discussion about the situation in Iran, or going into a rally in solidarity with the situation in Iran. These are fantastic jobs that obviously the tenants union, the people in the tenants union, and also other socialist activists, feminist activists have collaborated with us, and we really appreciate these solidarity actions. But at the same time, we need to think about a different kinds of solidarity action. Maybe we can call it concrete solidarity action, or I don't know, real solidarity action, which would have a material impact on the situation in Iran. For example, that may be like sending medicine to people inside Iran, or talking with the MPs to sponsor the people who are which are under the execution. The Islamic Republic is trying to execute many people, and the MPs, members of parliament, have the power to sponsor those people and save their lives. And we can think about different possibilities of concrete solidarity actions. But we know that this would be a long road. So first of all, we can start with the symbolic acts of solidarity and know each other and learn from each other. And then with our creative ideas, maybe we can find different paths to concrete acts of solidarity. And that's what we're, trying to facilitate inside.
Yeah, that's fantastic. My friend was actually just asking me about ways to support Iranian women the other day, and I was saying, because we had a guest on the show a few weeks ago who was sending medicine to people in Ukraine, I was saying that was the exact example I came up with was sending medicine. But she was then she asked me like, well, how would you do that? Like, how would you actually send it over to people? Would you? I mean, you just said that it's kind of a long path and we need to get there, right? But like, do you have kind of example of how that would be organized? Like how we would organize to send material resources to people?
Yeah, even thinking about this question collectively together, that how we can send some medicine to the people who, for example, are under the martial law in some cities and don't have access to medicine. When we gradually think about it together and gradually build some networks of solidarity to send these medicines to those areas, I think this would gradually create that project. So what I mean is that we need to work collaboratively together to create these, acts of solidarity. Maybe the basic infrastructure or the logistics for doing it internationally right now, at least from Manchester to Iran, has not been built yet. But this is one of the projects that we need to collectively think about it. On the underground between Iranians, we have some, let's say, tunnels to send some money to people who can buy these medicines and send it to those people. But these are not enough. So we need, build it more internationally with each other. And the issue is that the medicine is not the only problem. There are many other, humanitarian problems that we can tackle it with each other. So I think it is very important that we first raise the awareness about the problems and then, collectively work together on these issues.
Yeah, 100%. And in terms of, you mentioned earlier in sort of pressuring MPs to, use their executive power in terms of like, holding, I guess, diplomacy meetings with, Iranian officials, sort of like trying to hold them to account for the execution of innocent protesters. That was something that I actually heard about in the news recently. I think today it was announced that the ambassador of Iran was summoned to the Houses of Parliament. Did you read anything about that?
Well, today I was very busy with other meetings, so I haven't checked the news about this issue. But I know that on the level of diplomatic level, many attentions have been raised about the issue of the executions that are happening right now.
Yeah.
And it is very important that we all focus on this demand that there should be no execution of political prisoners. And we should do as in any way that we can to stop this to happen, because right now Islamic Republic of Iran has published a list of more than 35 political prisoners to be executed in the upcoming days, and it is a matter of days and even a matter of hours that we need to save these lives. Yeah, it's a very important issue.
Yeah. So where can people find the list and bring it to their MPs?
Yeah, there is a link in the Amnesty International site. I can send it to you right now if you want.
Yeah.
That shows the list of the people that are under the threat of being executed. I don't know how can I say it in English.
Yeah, they're going to be executed. Yeah.
To be executed. Yeah. And if you raise those names, bring it to your local MPs and ask the local MPs to sponsor these people politically, then it may save their lives. And also,
I
it
just dropped the link in chat from Amnesty International, by the way. I've just posted it in the chat so people
Brilliant.
can click through there.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sophie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go on. I'm sorry for interrupting,
Yeah,
Sohrab.
and also it is not the matter of the political prisoners under the execution threat. Also, there are many political prisoners that are unfortunately gradually dying under the tortures that they are in the prison, that are experiencing in the prison, or some of them have major medical problems, which they should not be in the prisons. They should be in hospitals, and they are just letting them to gradually die in the prison. So
through neglect, basically. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
exactly, through neglecting them. So even having a list of these political prisoners, which we are working on it to publish it very soon, having a list of these political prisoners and asking the MPs to sponsor these people also would be very important to save their lives.
Yeah, definitely. And because this is a thing that I noticed the most when I was at the protest with Red Roots Collective, is that there were a couple of people and they had the shirts on that says "Stop Killing Children." And this is something that's been happening a lot in Iran, isn't it? Where everybody has been protesting. This has been it's not just been, like people say, they call it the women's revolution, and it is obviously, the women's revolution in a lot of ways, but it is, a mass movement, isn't it? And it's people from all backgrounds, and children are supporting it. Do you know what I mean? Like young people are supporting the liberation movement and stuff. And yeah, these kids are just dying because they're just being shot by protesters and stuff. And what kind of, I guess one of the main things that I wanted to ask is is there any communication that you have with people who've been on the ground in the protests in Iran, or do you have any communication with people over there, or?
Yeah, well, obviously, because we came to Manchester last year,
right?
Partner, and when we were in Iran, we were also active on the ground for building the protests and working with other activists, political activists, social activists, environmentalists. So still, we have organic connection with people inside Iran in different regions. And as you said, well, you're completely right. This is not simply a feminist, let's say, revolution. Although women, let's say the network of feminists have a great role in building the mass mobilization and the protest. But you can see that workers also in different industrial sectors are building their strikes. The teachers also have a great role. For example, the teachers' trade union in Iran, which is a national trade union, which has different associations in each province, they called for political strike for the first time. They have unlocked the issue of political strike, because all the strikes were economic strikes, and so they have a significant role in this issue. And you can guess that when the whole education system becomes politicized and the teachers turn into political activists, then the students also learn from the teachers and learn from their families. And you can guess that how the students, for example, in the elementary schools, start to build their student committees inside the schools and to initiate demonstrations from inside the school through the street and invite people. Can you guess elementary school kids, inviting people to join their demonstrations. But unfortunately, the Islamic Republic is suppressing even those kids brutally, and many kids have been murdered through this uprising and this revolution, unfortunately. And another point is this is not simply an uprising belong to a specific class within our society. Different classes, middle classes, poor middle class people, working class, unemployed people, ethnic minorities, and other marginalized communities. All of them are making a kind of still a loose alliance, if you like, within their neighborhoods, and working together to build their initiatives. That's, I think, the most beautiful part of this social revolution, in my opinion, that everybody is in some sense involved in it, but at the same time, this level of suppression, the level of repression is so high.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's something that someone said to me at the protest as well. Like, because when we went to, I mean, maybe this is something that you don't want to talk about, but I feel like it's important to note, because I think that when white people in Britain who might not even just white people, but just people who live in Britain who are ignorant to, what's going on in Iran, they may see the Iranian flags and have an idea of what's going on and go, oh yeah, brilliant, but it's got the lion in the middle. And obviously what I'm talking about here, because there is this disagreement between various different groups that are in the imperial core, so like in Britain and stuff, and these are like Iranian monarchists, like they support the Shah, right? And I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit and just enlighten people as to what kind of, different groups are sort of rallying for power at the minute in Iran.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think we have to distinguish between the perspective of the revolutionaries inside Iran and the perspective of the Iranian diaspora outside Iran. About the outside of Iran, what we are seeing is that the Iranian diaspora can be divided in terms of the political orientation into at least three categories. First of all, we have these, as you said, more the monarchists who wants to bring back the old Pahlavi dynasty to Iran. They think that what happened in 1979 was not a revolution. It was somehow, how do you say it in English? A kind of a revolt of crazy people who didn't know that how good was the Pahlavi dynasty.
Yeah.
Crazy Islamist people or something like this.
Yeah.
We can talk about that area 1979 more if you want, but I think that was wrong, and we have to turn back to the old Pahlavi dynasty.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can think that they are very, very hardline nationalists with right-wing policies. They repress any independent feminist voice. Mostly it is the demonstration, the rallies are male dominated, and they use very bad language with sexual sexual harassment, if you like, and and they are ignorant of ethnic minorities' demands. So, if you like, they are fascists.
Yeah,
In,
sounds like it.
Yeah, that sounds like, if you like, yeah,
Yeah.
with the facade of right-wing monarchists.
Mm-hmm.
This can be seen as a far right people, and then in the center right, we have if you like, right-wing Republicans, which these Republicans, maybe you can see their major faces, major celebrities in social media, like Masih Alinejad. You can search it, and you can see that she was she's very good at taking pictures with the right-wing politicians in Western countries. Or, for example, the other guy, which it seems that because I don't like him, I always forget his name. So the psychological aspect of the issue, that anytime that I want to talk about him, I just forget his name. But anyway, he also used to he lost his family during an airplane crash inside Iran, when Iranian government shut down a Ukrainian airplane with 2 missiles, and it is still a secret, and that no one knows why they have shut down that airplane with missiles. But the family of this guy, Hamed Esmailion, you can search him also. The family of this guy was in this airplane and has been killed, the family. So he turned into kind of a civil activist, trying to, enlighten people about what is happening inside Iran. But he gradually, climbed the ladders of political society, and finally, he went into NATO conferences, and his organization talks about lobbying and pressuring for, guess what, no-fly zone, and for
Right.
this kind of warmongering policies.
Yeah.
So it seems that the right-wing Republicans are going into the path of collaborating with the major Western powers to do anything that they can to make the Islamic Republic, to get rid of Islamic Republic, even if with the expense of another war in Middle East.
Sorry, go on. Yeah,
you go on, and then I will just.
Oh yeah. Because what it sounds like is, from on the face of things, to most liberals in the the US and the UK and Europe and stuff like that, they will look at what both of these two individuals are saying and go, okay, yeah, they got the right idea, but then underneath it is this sort of like violent, I guess like oppressive, it's imperialist, I guess, warmongering, as you say. So that can sort of draw people into the, this I guess, third party kind of, I guess, protest of it all. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we saw that a lot with, with like Ukraine, and we've seen it before when, you get these like, I guess like more liberal types of activists that will push for things like like really heavy sanctions on working class people, or like the no-fly zone. And I think that there is a reliance on the average liberal person not knowing exactly what that means to kind of like agree to it. Like when people think of a no-fly zone, they think like, oh, that just means that no planes are going to be allowed to fly there or something like that. Like people legitimately think that. Like I had coworkers that I had that conversation with Ukraine, and I said like, well, what do you think that means? And it's like, no, it means like they're going to shoot them, they're going to take them down. And also like people think like, oh, instead of invading, like America should just do sanctions, or the UK should do sanctions and stuff. And a lot of these things end up with just, hurting working class people. And
I remember
sanctions often just lead to war. So,
I remember the more liberal sphere of online leftists like calling for both no-fly zones over Ukraine and sanctions on Russia. And like, I know some Russian people who like can't use any internet banking now or can't use PayPal.
Oh yeah.
What amazing! I've talked about this before. I had to take my money for surgery in cash because my surgeon is Russian, and like she just couldn't receive an electronic payment. It's not. Yeah, this stuff is wild. It's just wild how much people don't think about it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems that this right-wing Republicans have created a good public face for the Iranians, that we are pro-democracy, we are pro, human rights and things like this. But behind the scene, what they are doing is, promoting aggressive strategies, and strategies which unfortunately may lead to another war. And also about the sanctions, as you said, at the same time, when people on the opposition, if we don't defend sanctions on Islamic Republic, people always accuse us of being pro-Islamic Republic. But at the same time, if we support sanctions, then we suddenly find ourselves in the game of the right-wing Republicans. So it's a very, very tricky thing, that how we can, obviously we can support the targeted sanctions if, for example, because the ruling elites have many bank accounts with so much wealth in them outside Iran. These targeted sanctions could be good to freeze their assets and to release the assets. But at the same time, the issue is that who will use those assets? Are they going to give these assets to right-wing Republicans to, further their, projects, or will they give these assets to the working class or the revolutionaries inside Iran? Obviously, the answers. When I ask this question, but these are the problems that we have. The opposition outside Iran, the right-wing Republicans and the monarchists are not representing the voice of Iran's revolution, unfortunately. But at the same time, we are witnessing an emergence of a left-wing revolutionaries outside Iran also, which we are trying to build a transnational coordinating platform to coordinate the actions of different leftist collectives. To show the voice of to represent the voice of the Iran's revolution. This is the political map. I hope that would be.
No, that's perfect. I think that really sort of opens people's eyes into sort of understanding that it can be very easy to support the the people that aren't going to really be advocating for much change within Iran, and potentially the people who could make the change even worse. So thanks for laying that out, Sohrab. Now you said that you came here last year with your partner from Iran. And so I guess it'd be really interesting to just ask this question, because this is something that I've been interested in since hearing about the spark and Mahsa Amini and the actual revolution itself. So how long do you think that this has been sort of under the surface, on the cards, as it were, in Iran?
Yeah, yeah. Well, well, actually, under the surface, we have to get back to the 1979,
Yes.
to my previous generations.
Yes.
At that time, when the Iran's revolution in 1979 managed successfully to get rid of the Pahlavi dynasty, we observed the emergence of different shuras. What I mean by shuras is workers' council. So workers' councils in different areas, for example, in the oil factories, in the steel factories, and other places in industrial sections, also in universities, the students' councils and the teachers' councils, and in the neighborhoods, all these councils from the bottom just growth and emerged, developed. And this is 1978, 1979,
Right.
when the Pahlavi dynasty just collapsed.
Yeah.
And then what happened from Paris? The you know, with the help of the Western governments, they just brought back Ayatollah Khomeini as, let's say, a response to this revolution inside Iran,
Yeah.
to mobilize some section of the Islamic part of this revolution against the revolution, and we call it the counter revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened during the 1980 until 1983, what they call it cultural revolution, but obviously it was a cultural counter revolution. They just shut down the universities, and they just repressed the independent and autonomous councils and committees in neighborhoods, in factories, in schools, and they even attacked to the Kurdish regions and to other regions that they were trying to resist the Islamic Republic. But obviously, the revolution, as you know, after these struggles, defeated, and they killed more than 30,000 leftists, Marxist, socialists in their prisons.
Wow.
So after that, the next generation during the 1990s started to rebuild itself underground, and I am the let's say the son of that generation.
Yeah.
Which when I found myself when I was 16 years old, 17 years old, I found myself in the green movement. Obviously, it was not an environmental movement. It was about the presidential election and the fraud that happened in that.
Yeah.
So we started to build our networks underground. You have to know that, the level of the police repression is so much that people need to do all their activities anonymously.
Yes. Yes.
And, that's why the networks of collaboration often works on a very local level, and it's very hard to connect different parts together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but when we reached the 2010 and after that, when we saw different social networks like WhatsApp, Telegram, the Signal, and things like this began to come to Iran, things changed. So we started to, do these networks nationally on these social networks, obviously completely anonymous, and with using so many security protocols and things that when I compare our activities inside Iran and the activities that, for example, in Manchester, it's a different world, honestly.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. This is why, chat, when we had Tier on to speak about operational security, this is why it's important. Like, you might all have been watching that episode and thought, why do we need to make sure that everyone who's in our society isn't a cop? That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's whatever. Like, we're just doing tenants union stuff. But in Iran, it's different. Like, you can get
But
fucking
that's
killed.
even happened down here in New Zealand. We've had that before. There's been multiple times where undercover police have infiltrated environmentalist and leftist organizations, and like being embedded there for a long time. Like, one of them was for years, had relationships with people, had a girlfriend within the organization, was doing all this kind of stuff, and at the same time just feeding out information and kind of just hampering all kind of actions and leaking everything at the time, which
Oh, and they did that in the UK as well. Like, one of them had a kid with an activist, which is fucked.
That was one thing that happened down here. It was they were trying to take one of them to court because he had a bunch of relationships with a bunch of women, and when they found out, they were like, obviously this is like a huge ethical breach and stuff. But so I think it's like, even just for grassroots environmental stuff, if the police are deciding that this is a risk that they're willing to take, then when it gets to bigger things, when it gets to bigger organizations, they'll absolutely will take a chance on that. And it also kind of ties back to what we were talking about in the news at the start with the far right group in Germany that were busted, and how their OPSEC was terrible, and they were busted because they were a bunch of old men talking to each other saying like, yes, I want to commit some violence for the German Empire or some shit like that. Like, they were were idiots or whatever. So you can imagine living under an actual like a really repressive regime. It's going to be a no-brainer for them to be monitoring communications and everything like that. It's
And I have probably the silliest example of cop infiltration. A few weeks ago, chat might remember that we had Jay and Issa from the Laboratory of Insurrectionary Imagination, and one of the things that they did was they founded the Rebel Clown Army, who were protesters who would go in full clown gear, and they they talked with us about how they decided to step away from that because people were doing kind of bad clowning that they thought was an aesthetic crime. But like, another thing that they talked about in their book, and it's also on the Wikipedia for the Rebel Clown Army, is they cops started infiltrating the clown groups and having to train as clowns to clown with them.
They will go to any length, right?
No, absolutely. They will try and get in. Another thing is also, like, I know from somewhat from both sides. Like, my mum's family is a cop family. Like, so I know a little from both sides that, like, we're used to thinking of like the eye of the state as being like all seeing, and it knows everything that's going on, but it knows as much as it knows. And like, Tier also told us not to assume that like there's anything that they can't surveil, which is kind of good advice in terms of like being as prepared as possible. But like, in reality, if cops are looking at like a new organized group, they don't know what it is, and they don't know kind of how dedicated it is to like doing kind of serious revolutionary stuff, and like what a threat it could pose to the state. And so like, one of the reasons that they'll infiltrate like just about anything is like they just about anything could turn out to be something that they want to spy on.
Yes. Which is why it's important, coming back to the original point, which is
To
why
practice
it's
good OPSEC.
important. Yes, OPSEC, InfoSec, extremely important. So Sohrab, talk to us about you know, in terms of well, actually, were you finished? Have you, because you were talking to us about like the sort of the undercurrent of the revolution sort of bubbling up there, and was there more there? Sorry to interrupt you.
No. I think I've finished what I've tried to say.
Okay.
But I just want to add that, you know, even when I compare the surveillance issue in for example, UK and Iran, it seems that in UK, this is my first impression, that it's a land of peaceful coexistence of different agents and different, you know, surveillance apparatus, with each other. And even if you are monitored, your political activity is monitored, but you have this right to express your political, you know, will in some under some conditions. I don't say that, you know, we are in the free world with, you know, unlimited you know capacity for action, but
yeah,
let me give you just one example, that if you in Iran want to create a society, you know, in a small society with your friends, which if your society has a constitution, you will be you will go to jail for just having a constitution, for writing a constitution.
Wow, Jesus.
You know, you cannot create a community, or even a community organization. You know, you cannot create an NGO, if you like.
right.
If you create an NGO, they will either take it over, or, you know, arrest you with some accusation that either you're working with a foreign country, or, you know, something like this. So that's, you know, the level of political repression is huge.
Yeah.
And when I talk with some of our Chinese friends in London, and I was telling them this is our situation in Iran, and he just gave me a very bitter laugh and told me, "Look, brother, even our situation in China is worse than this. So I don't know how the situation in China is for those people, but it seems that it's even harder for them."
Wow.
Yeah, I can believe that for sure. So and with regards to the police, and with regards to just sort of how far reaching the police and how far the state wants to go in order to repress political organizing in Iran, there are actually, like, I don't know if this is true, but this is something that one of the organizers that got in touch with he was coordinating the stewards on the day. I can't remember his name, but he said that we shouldn't really be too worried about the monarchists who are going to turn up. We should be more worried about Iranian secret police in the UK. And is that something that you know about? Is that true, what he was saying, or like is this just nonsense? I don't know. Like,
well, obviously, as I told you, Britain is. It seems that it's a country of peaceful coexistence of different agents. So even Iranian agents are in. Are involved in these kinds of rallies or things like this, but they are not a threat to these political activities. They don't have this power to do something in UK, but they are observing us very carefully. And well, obviously they are more observing the Iranian activists and not, the random British people,
Yeah.
but they're just trying to know that who is doing what in foreign countries, the Iranian citizens.
Yeah. It's more like intelligence gathering, basically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because it's so hard to think about how to just going back to the initial sort of point of the Red Roots Collective of how do we get to the stage where we have places in Iran that we could have connections to, or even countries connected to Iran on the border where it's possible to get supplies in, or get aid to people, or get people out if they need to get out and stuff like that. All these different kinds of potential issues and how to solve them with that much of an observation going on. It's like it's we talk about the panopticon here, like Foucault's panopticon and stuff, but like in Iran, it's like, it is the panopticon. Like, who knows what is being looked at, and who knows how things are going to get observed. And so that is like a real challenge. And I think that this is something that, we should really be thinking about how we can move forward with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of what we can do, first of all, let me tell that what we have done until now, so we can build on that. First of all, we have successfully created the Solidarity Organizing Committee for Iran's situation in Manchester, with the help of Red Roots Collective, the Manchester Trade Union Council, and obviously the trade unions that are affiliated to the Manchester Trade Union Council are involved in this initiative. And we are trying to build the same committee in other cities in UK to make it like a nationwide organization. And then on another level, we're trying to, attach this organization to the transnational coordinating platform, which can link us to collectives in France and in Germany and Netherlands, and also other places. But these are the initial steps, and we need to think about how we can make this organization sustainable, because I am definitely sure that ordinary citizens of UK, or the workers' activists, feminist activists, have their own local agendas too. We have our own problems in Manchester that we need to solve them, which are somehow similar to the problems in Iran. We all live in the neoliberal world of the commodification of everything. But the issue is that in order to make it sustainable, that's the big question for us right now, that how is it possible to link our local problems with these international problems, and to make this not just a solidarity for Iran, but it can be a kind of a reciprocal, if you like, solidarity, or mutual solidarity between the immigrants and the people in Manchester, in Bristol, in London, and other places. So that's the point that I'm very eager to know your ideas about how we can link it with our local initiatives, and also the audience that is watching this show, and also other people. That's the point. I think we need to think about it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of headway have you made so far in establishing links in Bristol and London and other cities in the UK?
Well, we are trying to, first of all, because me and my partner, we were both students in University of Manchester.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
we have built a society called Women, Life, Freedom, and from here I invite all of you to join this. If you're in Manchester and if you like to get involved in the public discussions that we're carrying on in this society, please join this Society of Women, Life, Freedom. So through the universities, which is the safest place for us right now, we're trying to make the first connections in different cities, and then to extend that networks outside university through the trade unionists and socialist activists and feminists, and then after that with through the uh, workers themselves and local people themselves, because the trade unionist activists are not the workers. There's a link, a mediating link between us and the workers, for example. So this is the direction of spreading our voice and raising the consciousness. But as I said, I think it should not be about Iran specifically. It should be about Iran and us here in UK, in Manchester and other places. It should be also about China. It should be also about Greece and other places. And yeah, that's the way that we are trying to spread our voice.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important thing to consider as well, because if there's one thing that British people, British activists even, need to sort of do a bit more work on, is knowledge of the imperial periphery, right? Because we live here, we talk about this on Red Planet all the time. We talk about the imperial core. So if you're unfamiliar with this, Sohrab, or any other listeners, the imperial core countries are the UK, USA, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, and Europe as well. And so there is like a walled world there, and within the walled world of the imperial core, like Sohrab says, we have this peaceful coexistence with, you're able to sort of like be surveilled, but also speak your mind freely and stuff like this. But there is still not this 100% freedom. But then in the imperial periphery, a lot of things operate differently. It depends where you are, and this is something that needs to be, I think, a lot of people within the imperial core need to educate themselves on, because there is always that phrase, think global, act local.
Yeah.
But maybe people don't go far enough in this understanding of it, and they don't sort of go, okay, so I'm thinking globally, and they might immediately, the first thing that they do is go to climate change, which is the first thing that people would think of globally. Yeah. But maybe what they don't consider as part of climate change is how that affects people in the imperial periphery. So that's where we get people sort of who go to these, we spoke about this previously earlier today, where they come to these conclusions about climate change where it's, I'm going to change things on an individual level rather than organize on a collective level and try and make a difference in that regard.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this speaks to a broader issue, and maybe if there's some way that we can link this with Palestine action, possibly.
Because, well, I think there's I think what you're talking about as well is individualizing the things or whatever. I think when people thinking about, they say, I'm going to think globally, so I'm going to think about what's happening to these people here and what's happening to these people here, and you hear all these little snippets of things that are happening around the world. But I think one thing that I'm always trying to think about, or one thing that I always try and push on to others is thinking instead of about like all of these individual little things. Well, I mean, like still thinking about those, but then thinking about the things that like the things that connect all of those. And usually that's, you know, like it'll come down to like class or something like this. But yeah, I think that's really good when you're looking at organizations as well, organizations that have a bigger picture idea. And you get this a lot with like, you know, like socialist orgs or whatever, where they might be like, okay, we are a prison abolition group, but our end goal is, you know, like international socialism, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, like these I think like a lot of these orgs generally have a more like, they have a really consistent kind of ideology and stuff, you know, as well. So it's not just like an individual issue. It's like, okay, this is where we're starting from, and this is where we're going, and this is how we connect to the struggle of workers here or women here or whatever like that, because we have this consistent ideology that you know, that we can apply to the struggle of people in other places, and we can see how these are connected and stuff. So I think that's really important for people in chat. If you're like, you know, looking at all these things all over the world, all these different struggles, I think you know, there's like a lot of people will say like the phrase, you know, like one struggle, or, you know, there's no war but class war and things like that. It's like, we can, I mean, you know, it's like, we don't want to reduce things solely just to class, but I think that a lot of the time class is like the hinge, you know, of like that's the big thing, where it's like comes to like capital and power and everything like that, and then all of our other little like our identities and, you know, like nations and everything like that, we can see how those intersect from there. But I think, yeah, when we step back, if we're looking at it especially from like a Marxist lens or a communist lens, we're going to see that the connecting thing is usually like capital power, you know, like, yeah, like Serena is saying in the chat, class is a primary contradiction. And I think if we get clued up on that, then we can often see the way that all of these little things connect, and how that we can look at this bigger picture, this global worldview.
Yeah, we have to find out how to galvanize people, not just to do that, but you know, also to, because you know, it's one of those, like, it's the endless struggle with activism. It's like, okay, I want to get involved in something, and then you get involved in something, and then, you know, you go a million miles an hour and you do this and this and this, and then you burn out and you go, fuck, I've you know, it's like, well, I went and I did a thing, and now I've got no energy to do anything. And then
it's consuming it.
Yeah, and then you've also got to ask yourself, okay, well, you know, how much time have I got to devote to this? How much time have I got to devote to this? And I think that it's like you can balance this stuff. And you can balance this stuff in showing solidarity through the activism that you're already doing, like we did at the tenants union, you know, and Sohrab knows through his, you know, membership with the tenants union that this is something that we will always support, you know, in the tenants union, because we're committed to, you know, basically solidarity on a fundamental level with people who, you know, just believe that they shouldn't be oppressed generally, right? And in terms of like, you know, I think there's a lot of work to be done with some organizations in that regard, but I think generally speaking, it's quite good at the moment in the UK. We, you know, you've got the trade union council supporting Red Roots Collective, and that's really good because, you know, they're a big collective of unions, and there's lots of good activists within there. Cool. So I think that we have to sort of use the connections that we've got to reach out to, you know, people in Bristol, reach out to people in London, and form these, you know, bigger, like you say, these bigger chains of understanding and solidarity for the Red Roots Collective. And then hopefully we can start to establish some kind of supply line from our country or even from other surrounding countries to the people in Iran, or even, like you say, have more of a, I guess, a lobbying power in order to try and convince MPs and people in power to actually do something about this. I think another thing is social media. I think social media is such a powerful tool. That's why we like to get, you know, organizations on here, because I think that this is something that Sophie said, and I don't know if I'm fucking this up, but like that seizing the means of communication, you know, and basically saying, right, okay, well, we have the opportunity, you know, in this imperial core country to voice our political beliefs, and so we should do that like as much as we can. And that's why we're always saying to everybody listening, like, you know, do your own Red Planet, like, because you could be amplifying the voice of the Red Roots Collective, and you could be spreading the word, and you could be you know, doing all this kind of stuff. And that's why it's so important, I think. You know, in terms of practical advice, I don't really have much. This is pretty new to me, not gonna lie, Sohrab, but I imagine it's the same for you. And I do think that continuing to do demonstrations and continuing to you know, I think the social media thing is probably the best thing that I could offer. Like, I think using social media in this country to have like you know, do a social media campaign, like potentially make some videos on YouTube or something. I know that we have connections in the union for that as well, Sohrab, so if you wanted to speak to someone, I could definitely put you in touch. So yeah, it's all that kind of stuff. I think like amplifying the voices of the Red Roots Collective, making sure that more people hear about it, and then linking up with other like other people doing the same thing. So I think that Palestine, I mentioned this earlier, but Palestine Action, I don't know, do you know about Palestine Action?
Yeah.
So like I don't know if you spoke to anyone from Palestine Action before.
Well, no, we are beginning to build our connection with people in the Palestine Action, but obviously because we were very busy with, you know, other things that we couldn't find the time to do it. But it's on the agenda right now. In terms of you know, practical things that we can do, not only to raise the voice of Red Juice Collective, but also to raise the voice of this social revolution inside Iran. I think it's very important that we build public discussions around international issues wherever that we are, either in social medias, or perhaps it would be better to be in person in some, you know, some places. Like if you're in university, it could be in your society and university, or outside university, in your community, your friends, because it seems to me that the working class in UK right now, it seems to me that inside Britain, the working class is. I know that the working class right now is doing a very hard job to, you know, build these strikes and do the coordinating the strikes, and, you know, to struggle for its own, you know, problems right now. But at the same time, it's very important that to bring a kind of an internationalist element within this working class, and because I think that this is the missing part within our everyday struggles, that the working class here, and not just here, in many countries, is simply focused on its own, you know, local or national problems, and not the international problems. And if we become successful in building this, you know, element, and to help the working class to incorporate this internationalist element in its own struggle, it will, you know, change the game completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I think that public discussion about international issues, and keep asking ourselves that how we can link these problems with our local problems, you know, make the situation different. I think
a huge thing to consider, this is literally, I was thinking about this when you were talking about real solidarity. I don't know if either of you have seen the film Ne Passerán.
No, I haven't. I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
So Ne Passaran is a story about Scottish engineers in the 70s during the advent of neoliberalism in Chile with Pinochet's regime. And they were working in a Rolls-Royce factory. They were making engines, and one of the guys in there who was part of the union, he was the union rep, I think.
Yeah.
He knew that they were making these engines to support the regime of Pinochet, and he didn't know what it was all about. So he spoke to some of his union buddies, and he found out, and he went, Jesus, these are fucking fascists. I was fighting those 30 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can't be giving them engines for war. And he just basically, like, you know, spoke to his union. They voted on it unanimously, and they just blacklisted these engines, and they just put them out in the yard. And anyone who's an engineer knows that as soon as, like, you know, the very unique, complex mechanisms of engines are exposed to weather, if they're exposed to elements, then they're going to fail. You know what I mean? So they're not going to be usable straight away. So even just the act of putting them out in the yard to wait meant that they were unusable. Now, this is something that Pinochet didn't know, funnily enough, because he's not an engineer. He was just a fascist. And so they tried to use it as like bargaining. They were kind of like trying to say, what we should do is we should use these engines as like bargaining chips to like release political prisoners and stuff like this. And there was all these kind of negotiations that went on when the withholding of these goods happened, you know, from the solidarity of, and that this is true solidarity. That is what the meaning of solidarity is. It's taking this action that actually affects the people out there. So not just in giving aid to you know, the protesters on the ground in Iran. Another thing that we could think about is what kind of supply chain does Britain have with Iran? Like, what kind of, you know, goods are being sold directly from Britain to Iran? It might turn out to be, you know, nothing, but it could turn out to be something that's crucially important to the Iranian regime. And if it's not in Britain, then it's going to be in the imperial core, or it's going to be in another imperial periphery country. And, you know, this is something that we could think about. And you're right, that's kind of where the disconnect is in terms of like working class organizing, trade union organizing, and international solidarity, basically. And I think that's something that we should really think about. We can take a lot of inspiration from those engineers in, you know, on how to do something like that. So I wonder if that's something that we could possibly explore in building that international solidarity.
Yeah. Can I add two things to what you said? I have two interesting examples. So first of all, the chief steward in our rally will Robert Mears. He has an interesting story of international solidarity during the Bosnian War.
Right.
I definitely invite you to watch his narration of, you know, that project of solidarity when they managed to, you know, send many workers' aid convoys to one of the cities in Bosnia called Tuzla, which is a multi-ethnic working class city, you know, besieged by many, you know, from different parts. So this is also a very interesting example of how workers could locally manage to, you know, raise the funds for these, you know, convoys to go to Tuzla and come back for many times. And during this, you know, project, they have created many connections through when the convoys were going to Tuzla, you know, in different cities in Europe. They create, they somehow, let's say, develop this project more and more. So maybe we can also think about the past examples, as you said, for example, the case of the Scottish workers or the workers' aid convoys, and also we can there are examples that we can think about them right now. For example, I propose that let's look at the situation of the Urmia Lake in northwest of Iran.
Yeah.
It's a lake that is dying, and it's drying up.
Mm.
And if this lake would die until next decade, because around this lake, more than 50 cities and more than 7 million people are living there, and these people should be displaced because their land would be useless for living. And so which organizations are responsible for dying of not only this lake, but for all the water stress, the extreme water stress level in the Middle East? We know that the fossil fuel companies like BP, like Shell, are
Of course.
among the companies that have the most impact on the climate change, and they are responsible for the the possible misery of these people. And so how we can internationally stay against the activities of these companies, and well, not falling into a kind of simply an environmentalist project, but a kind of a broader project which would include also these environmentalist agendas.
Yeah.
It's also a thing that we can think about it, and it's a huge issue, I think.
It might be worth,
yeah.
it might be worth linking up with Just Stop Oil in that regard. Yeah.
And thinking of things that people can do, overseas to kind of like help out with these, movements all around the world. I just remembered, just as you were talking earlier, about Palestine Action, about how they in London they did they shut down the Elbit factory, which we've talked about a lot on stream before, where it was people in London shut down a weapons factory. The London Palestine Action Group shut down this factory, and just by exposing what they were doing at the factory, that they were building, it was drones and tactical UAVs and things, just by actually just shining a light on it and being like, this is what is made here, the company just shut it down because they were like, oh, well, this is too much scrutiny for us.
Yeah.
So I think that there's things like this, like these kind of direct action things are actually like really, really great ways to support people, in these foreign struggles. Obviously, it's with Israel, they have like all these like kind of business interests and things around the world. It's like, I think maybe quite different for Iran because of the nature of the country and things like that. There's not exactly like a factory we can go shut down or something like that. But I think looking at these groups where it's like, like they don't, like you don't have to be necessarily, you don't have to be on the ground in the country to help out, and you don't have to be like, like this isn't, they're not calling for sanctions. They're not, they're not appealing to, Joe Biden to bring freedom, or anything like that. It's just, there's a bunch of people that just were like, look, there's something in our community that is happening that is, like there's this directly affects the suffering of people, you know, in a very material, very tangible way. What can we do about it? And they just went there and chained themselves to the factory and shut it down. And yeah, and it's like that means less bombs getting made, you know, which is a net benefit for everyone, I think.
Definitely. I do just want to remind chat that we've got Sohrab for another 40 minutes. But we love to ask our guests questions, and we've got one question so far in the chat. So if anyone else has any questions, get them ready. We will log them in our little Red Planet secret documents that you are not allowed to see.
Yeah.
And we will ask Sohrab as and when from questions from the chat in about 10 minutes or maybe 20 minutes. We're gonna start asking questions. So let us know if you have any thoughts. Even if you have thoughts or anything like that, just let us know, and we will ask them or say them for you. That's what we will do.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and I think just thinking about that kind of action that can really make such a difference in. This is why I brought up Palestine action, Tim, because what you said, you know what I mean? It's like so it is that literal sort of like direct action can do so much damage to what is, you know, happening in a regime in any country really, depending on where it is, you know, targeted and what kind of I guess goods are being commodified in certain areas in the country you're doing the direct action in. But the question is, how do we find that out? How do we find that out about what is going on in the imperial core that can directly affect, you know, people in Iran? And that's really the big sort of coalition thing. Is there anything else about Red Roots Collective that you wanted to share just in the sort of last 20 minutes, Sohrab? Maybe you've not touched on so far?
Well, the thing that I'm really eager to say about Red Roots Collective is that, well, we have started our, you know, projects very recently, let's say in the last 4 or 5 months. Our first rally was about the Rwanda deportation plan. About, you know, taking the refugees to Rwanda, and
yes.
So and then the second action that we had was about, you know, we are trying to build our connection with the refugees that are coming from the Middle Eastern and North African countries or other places, and the third action we had was, you know, with the uprising that happened in Iran, we focused more on the situation in Iran. What I'm trying to say is that we are not simply focusing on the situation in Iran, or we have this, you know, tendency of you know, incorporating environmentalist, socialist, feminist projects and agendas in our collective, and we're eager to make this collective as big as possible to include all, you know, sorts of people to collaborate with each other. Of course, we are some of us, including me, we have a Marxist perspective. We have a, you know, kind of a revolutionary socialist background, but this is not the only tendency within us or trend within us. We have this interest of working with, you know, to build a kind of a broad coalition of different left, you know, projects. So feel free to follow our Instagram if you like, and also feel free to send us email, or if you want to join our programs. And yes, let's be in touch with each other. wherever you are. You don't have to be in Manchester. Also, you can be everywhere, anywhere.
Yeah, we got an international audience over here, so yeah, feel free wherever you are in the world. I've just dropped the Instagram of Red Roots Collective in the chat there, and I think you can find out most of the information on there. Is that right? Yeah.
They can see our statements and a history of our recent activities. And let me also send you our email of Red Roots Collective.
Oh, you're gonna put that in the chat? Yeah. Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. I got that. Thank you.
Cool.
And yeah, there it is. Okay, so the email is in the chat right now. There you go. You can go ahead and email Red Roots Collective right there. And I think another important thing as well is to, as Sohrab says, especially if you're in the UK, if you're in Manchester, if you're in the UK, actually, if you're a student listening and you're in the UK, it might be really interesting to link up with the University of Manchester Student Union on this, because, as Sohrab said, the Red Roots Collective have, created a society here, and I have this on screen. I'm going to show it you right now. The Woman Life Freedom Society, basically, and there's a lot of information on there, and it's also there is also translation there into Arabic, I believe. Is that right?
I think it's Farsi.
Is it Farsi? Sorry, that's my bad. Yeah. So yeah, translated into Farsi.
Cool.
And yeah, you could go ahead and check that out. And I'm just gonna drop a link to that in the chat anyway for people in the stream right now who might want to get involved and help out with that.
Yeah, and also if people want to connect with me directly for more information, here is my email. If you would please share it with the audience.
Totally. I'll stick that in the chat right now. Hold up. I've lost everything. There you go. And you can send Sohrab an email directly there. Yeah, brilliant. That's fantastic. And yeah, I guess, God, I mean, there's so much to think about, and it is like it's such a fresh thing, I think, in everybody's mind, like what's going on in Iran, and it's like it's actually really refreshing to speak to someone who's sort of like just starting a movement. A lot of the time on Red Planet, like we have people who've either been doing stuff for years, or like Ben from the union, Ben Clay, like, and we had him on from the tenants union just to speak about what we do there, and he could speak for years. Do you know what I mean? Like we didn't need to say anything at one point. I think Tim will probably remember that. We just let Ben say stuff for hours. It was great. And we didn't have to think about anything. But like, that's because Ben's been doing this for like decades, and he's sort of like well versed in it. But I think it is really refreshing to have someone come on that's got this like fresh movement and is sort of like showing that, because what we like to do for our chat, for our audience, is to sort of show how these things are started. And I guess the final question that I'm going to ask you, Sohrab, is like, how did you start? Like, were you one of the founding members of Red Roots Collective?
Yes.
Yeah. And how did you start? Like, what was your starting point for starting the Red Roots Collective?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we came to Manchester, well, first of all, we didn't know anybody here in Manchester, so it was first of all just like a random networking with different people and discussing different issues with them to find out what kind of political orientation people have, and then gradually we found, me and my partner, we found some interesting people with somehow similar agenda, and then we invited them to starting a kind of a a political discussion with each other about the situation in UK and the situation in Iran. And then out of this political discussion with each other, we found ourselves to have common interests. And then that's why I say that, you know, building these public discussions and political discussions is maybe one of the best roads to, you know, build the committees and build the organizations. So that was the, you know, the way that we created the first organizing committee of the Red Roost Collective. But the issue is that there should be a kind of a balance between organizing and mobilizing. What I mean by organizing is, you know, doing this kind of one-to-one chats in the workplace, in your neighborhood, in your university, and try to, you know, first of all, hear their problems and, you know, see how you can connect their problems with your problems and do some more collaboration to build these things. But this is all organizing. And then the issue of mobilizing is to how to build, for example, a rally in the streets to bring sometimes random people in the street. And then, you know, these two, the organizing and mobilizing, like two wings of Red Roost Collective, helped us to build our collective until now.
That's amazing, and I think that's really powerful because, you know, a lot of the times I think people want to do this stuff, but they don't know where to start. And I always tell people, oh, just start a WhatsApp group. But what you've said just there actually strikes me as a lot more, I guess, enticing, because, you know, if you just set up like, okay, let's go to the pub, or let's go around to someone's house and have dinner, you know, let's have a dinner party, but we're going to have a political discussion here. Like, we all agree with this stuff. So it's getting to know people who agree with you and agree with your politics, you know, building that friendship with them, and then going, right, let's get together and let's just talk about what we think is important. You know, let's just talk about, like, how do we do something? How do we make a difference? Like, what do we want to do? And you never know what's going to grow from that. You never know who is going to have, you know, the capacity to mobilize. You never know who is going to have the capacity to organize, who is going to have the capacity to, you know, support in various ways and stuff like that. Like, and this is a really important thing. I think it is about just sort of like taking that human element back from society that I think alienates from each other a lot, you know, in terms of sort of like, oh, well, you know, I know things are difficult with COVID, and I know things are difficult with, you know, just in general, sort of like getting back with people who have like not, I guess, socialized for a long, long time. You know, to sort of break down those social anxieties and get back into doing this stuff. But once you've done that, and once you're able to sit down, and, you know, it could even be a Zoom call like this. It could even be, you know, like, if you wanted to, you could just have like a Zoom night. Lots of people, you know, and the lockdown gave us loads of great examples for this as well, you know, like what you can do on a Zoom call that's like a bit of fun or whatever. And I, to be honest, when I used to drink, we just used to get together and drink on Zoom, you know, and just have like wine night. You know, and this is something that you can do. Like, this is something that you can organize with people. And I guess the beauty of the internet is that you could do that across borders now. And obviously it might be a bit more difficult to organize and mobilize a local movement with that in mind, but, you know, maybe you could start something else. Maybe you could start your own Red Planet. Maybe you could do a sort of cross borders solidarity movement or something. I don't know. You know, you never know. And I think it's just getting together and having these brainstorming discussions, you know, challenging each other creatively, because we are creative. And we have to take what we've learned from people like Issa Flammeau and Jay Jordan, you know, with the Laboratory of Insurrectionary Imagination, in getting creative with the revolution and making it irresistible, making it beautiful, you know?
Yeah, and making it cool, you know, like I think a lot of people have this idea that, you know, like some kind of like socialist organizing group or whatever is just going to be like a bunch of, you know, like people sitting around like just you know, just like talking about like kind of dense political theory or something like that. Whereas you know, like I think it is like
Marx's Lenin algebra.
Yeah, you know, like I think there's never been a time where it is more accessible to get people into this kind of stuff, just I mean through social media and stuff as well. But just I mean with like there's so many, like we're starting to see the, you know, the inherent contradictions of capitalism kind of like get, you know, like I don't think it's like, I think it's pretty hard to ignore for the average person right now to, you know, like look out their window and see what's happening to the world and, you know, and not see how that is linked to, you know, like the greater economic system or whatever. So I think it's quite easy at the moment to go out and talk to people and, you know, say like this cost of living crisis, this inflation, this, you know, these kind of things, like these are all part of the same thing. And, you know, like that, you know, and you can tie capitalism to imperialism and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, like what you were saying, Sohrab, about, you know, just talking to people, I think is like such a huge part of it. And talking to people that I would say, because everyone has friends, like everyone that is already, I would say, politically radicalized already has a group of like political friends that they talk to about politics. It's like, why don't you just talk to the other people, you know, talk to the people outside of that, talk to the people that don't already just agree with you, which can be, you know, like intimidating. But I think that's, you know, that's a really important thing there.
Yeah, I know about that intimidation. This weekend, my my partner's sister's partner, when I was just making a sort of slight joke about how under communism everyone will have food, he just kind of went Holodomor, and I was like, oh, okay, right, sure, yeah, you know, I was just making a light-hearted comment there, Sam, but you know, whatever, you know, you go off, King. But yeah, you know, you're right, it is you're right, it can be challenging, but I think even in that regard, you know, we can sort of just like push people on policies that they may agree with that are less radical, and then sort of, you know, having, yeah, I know, yeah, someone in the chat said, yeah, very normal reaction, yeah, just like anyway, yeah, we can push people to these you know, less radical things that they agree with by being more radical around them, right? I think that is something that people forget a lot of the time, is that like if you're coming at like, I don't know, your conservative mum with an idea of prison abolition, and then she's going, oh my god, all the rapists and murderers are going to be running around everywhere, and then you say, okay, well, how about like prisoners just don't get beaten on a daily basis and don't have, you know, isolation, you know, this kind, you know, solitary confinement and stuff, and then she might go, that sounds pretty decent in comparison to that. So, you know, you never know how you're gonna, I guess, you know, turn someone onto a more radical idea or more radical you know, position with regard to that. So yeah, we're just coming up to 20 past, and I think we should just start asking these questions, because there's not too many questions, but chat, if you've got any more, do not hesitate to write them down here, because yeah, it'd be really good to ask our guest a couple more questions. But Starhooker has got one here, and I'll start with this for you, Sohrab. So Starhooker says, media coverage is down, but how is the intensity of protest on the ground in Iran, as far as you know?
You mean right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, yes, the media, as you can expect from the mainstream media, the tendency in the mainstream media is like going up in, you know, focusing on something, and then suddenly it turns down. It just, mainstream media, consumes the different events in the world just to run its own business. But the issue is that in Iran, the uprising is still happening right now, and the demonstration, the rallies, the protests and demonstrations, the people have changed their strategy. They have changed their tactics from going into, let's say, city center, going into big squares and occupying the squares. They have changed it through going into the neighborhoods and start kind of let's say flash mob protests, if you like, or kind of a very speedy self-organization of protests in one neighborhood and then going into another neighborhood again, doing some protests and then going to other neighborhoods because the level of suppression is so high. But these popping up of different protests in different cities are still happening, and the situation in Kurdistan, in the west of Iran, is very bad because they are under martial law. So it appears that in that area the protests have been stopped, but it's still, people are doing things underground, so you cannot find it in the mainstream media. But if you're Iranian and you're activist and you know where to find it, to find the news in the Telegram, for example, because Iranians use Telegram so much, you can see the videos there, you can find the news, local news there. And also in southeast of Iran, in Baluchistan, it has become a kind of a ritual. Every Friday, people come to the streets, and only Friday, because it's also related to their religious rituals. That every Friday they come for praying, and then after pray they go for protest. So and also people are using some specific dates for going on strike and going on rally. For example, the last 3 days, the shopkeepers and shop owners went on a strike, and people stopped every financial transaction, and they stopped as much as they can going to work. So these are the things that are happening right now. But unfortunately, media coverage, mainstream media is not covering these things very well.
Yeah, 100%. Tim, do you want to read the next one?
Okay, cool. Let me just bring that back up here. So, Shafiq has asked, you mentioned that people in Iran are connecting and organizing across class lines. How does class affect people's daily lives? It's kind of a big question. I don't know. Yeah, what would you say, Sohrab?
Well, first of all, let's have a very short illustration of different classes in Iran. Let's say in a typical urbanized area, like, for example, Tehran, the capital city, or Shiraz or Isfahan, which are big cities in Iran. So we have a layer of middle-class people who work as, let's say, managers of companies or high-rank employees in companies, or doctors or lawyers, or these kind of people. These people, they are feeling the economic pressure also, but not like the working class or poor middle class, working class, other places, because inflation in Iran is right now 50%, 50.
Right.
So much.
Yeah.
And you have to know that the minimum wage in Iran is right now less than $70 per month.
Oh, wow.
Jesus.
Per month, yeah.
So you can guess. It's interesting that around 2009, 2016, I think, if I don't mistake, the minimum wage peaked. It was in the highest of it. It was around £250, and then it gradually came down to £70.
Oh, yeah.
So, even a middle class person is not getting so much, so they are under pressure, but they are thinking more about democracy, liberal rights, and things like this, and not really care. Most of them are not really caring for the workers' rights and marginalized people.
Yeah.
Then we have poor middle class, which are people who are expect themselves to work on high level jobs, but because there is no job, they need to work in low paid jobs. But also beneath them we have the working class, who most of them work on minimum wage, with short contracts, with no benefits and things like this. And beneath them we have, if you like, the subaltern or marginalized people. Mostly more than 50% of the population is below the poverty line. So it's a huge, number of people are living in a bad situation in terms of the economic situation.
Yeah.
So when we look at this combination of classes in a neighborhood, most of them understand each other's situation more or less, because most of them are in a poor condition. Even the middle class, we should not think about the middle class Iranians like the middle class, for example, people in UK, which have the opportunity to go to foreign trips 2 times a year, and having a normal good life with the capacity to buy a house very easily after, let's say, 3 years of work and things like this. But these people are working together on a neighborhood level, which makes it, I think, very interesting.
All right. So we've got some more. Actually, we got 2 more from Starhaka. I think they're like kind of related. So I'll read this one first. So in terms of building a coalition, it would be nice to hear in what ways you think would be best. So I'm guessing that means like if you are working with like an organization already, and you want to reach out to another organization, I don't know if just locally or internationally or whatever, but do you have any thoughts on what would be the best way to build a coalition with another group maybe?
You mean around this international solidarity or generally? Is it a general question?
It looks general,
I'm
yeah.
yeah, it looks general, but we could talk about both
Yeah.
if you want, or if you have a way that you feel you would like to be approached by another group or anything. Just any thoughts on it at all is good. I think.
Well, my experience is that first of all, if our friend is trying to build an organization, it's
Yeah.
very important that organization has they should write a constitution for the organization first of all, and then in that constitution they can open this option that other organizations can affiliate their organization,
Oh, yeah.
or they can affiliate other organizations. So for example, Red Roost Collective is right now affiliated to Manchester Trade Union Council. And so based on these kind of formal ties and these formal collaborations, you can build the policies around your organization and to affect policies of other organizations, and to build these connections to get that to build that coalition. I think this could be a good way to do it.
They've added some clarification in chat, which I think you answered in that really. And Starhawker says, I was asking between conflicting leftists. So, leftists who may not see eye to eye on different issues. I mean, what I know about Sohrab and what he said about his politics, and what I know about people in the Trade Union Council that supports and is in coalition with the Red Roots Collective, is that within those organizations, there are leftists of varying political ideology. Like even in the tenants union, like we have liberals, we have anarchists, we have there are even some conservatives, there are even some like centrist Labour voters and stuff, but they all can collaborate and work together on the main issue that we deal with, which is like housing rights, right? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like sometimes people will get involved with an org like that because of their direct material needs, like if they're in precarious housing, even if they are conservative, they might be moved towards joining a tenants union. And then, I mean, hopefully from there, they will realize the error of their way.
Yeah, they do. The one main person that I'm thinking of in specifically regarding this is like now like an avid leftist, like an absolutely like, so yeah, that's the kind of thing to, remember regarding that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Unless you got any more thoughts on that, Sohrab?
Oh, I think you have said perfectly.
Yeah, you know the score, right?
Cool.
And then finally we have Starhooker also asks where can we send donations as well. So I wonder if that's something that you could if you've got set up already, Sohrab, or
well, we have two ways for donation. First of all, I really thank our friend that have asked this question. We have created a Go Get Funding page about Iran Solidarity Campaign.
Brilliant.
Send you the link right now.
Cool.
Has been started very recently, so it's in its beginning, and at the same time, so I do encourage our friends, if they want to help our campaign, this would be the easiest way to help our campaign and to get updates about what we are going and what will be the next steps and things like this. And I think that would be good, because the second option is too complicated. Let us only have this option, which would be good.
With you. And then the final question that I think we've got from the chat tonight is from Stupid Moles, and they say, question for Sohrab: as someone from the States, as in the United States, is there a place to go for accurate information to be able to keep informed on the protests? It's been pretty difficult to discern what is accurate and what is not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of stuff that's come out where it's kind of just like, oh well, this is like very blatant, like American regime change propaganda sort of stuff. But yeah, Sohrab, is there anywhere that you would recommend that?
Yeah, of course. Well, I definitely suggest our friend to follow Blackfish Voice, the English page of the Blackfish Voice on Instagram. They are covering Iran's news regularly, and also if they want to hear more like analytical reports of news in Iran, the Slingers Collective they are very fascinating activists. Interestingly, they are also in the United States, and maybe he or she can also, get connected to these people. They are also, publishing interesting articles about Iran, and yeah, I think these two would be good sources of news and information about Iran.
That's looking great. Yeah, cool. I can already see an article there from November 10th on women, life, freedom. Oh yeah, brilliant, Sohrab. Honestly, thank you so much for your time tonight, and thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you want to plug before you go, or is that everything? Or
no, I just want to thank you and thank all the audience that you listened to me these 2 hours. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Cool. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. Take it easy. See you later, yeah?
Bye. Yeah, see you.
All right, bye-bye. So yeah, it's honestly, it's been an absolutely amazing show tonight. I can't believe it was just really, really good to hear from someone who knows so much about what's going on in Iran and stuff like that. Our comrade Sophie had to go earlier on. Unfortunately, she was having some really bad back pain. So if anyone was concerned about Sophie, that's what happened. Don't worry, she's going to be all right. She's just taking a rest, which is fair enough, obviously. She will be missed. But you know what I don't want to miss, Tim? The next Conquest of Dread piece of content. Where can I get that from?
Cool. Well, you can find me on Twitch or on YouTube as Conquest of Dread, or you can head over to Twitter and see me there as Dread Conquest, for as long as Twitter is still around. I haven't been streaming too much lately, but I'm thinking I'm going to squeeze in a couple over the holiday seasons. Probably pick up something new, something weird. I don't know. I like to stream a lot of weird games and talk shit about politics. But yeah, what about my good friend DJ Mule, Donald Mule?
Me?
Where can I find out more about this character?
Tim, thank you for asking. I'm sure everyone is struggling to find me on the platform I'm now streaming on, which is this stream, this is my channel that you're watching this on. Obviously not if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on the Red Planet YouTube. That's where you'll be watching it. But that's the answer. It's here. I'm on DJ Mule on Twitch. I'm also at DJ Mule _ on Twitter, again, for however long that is for. I'm also at DJMU3L on TikTok. I do a lot of TikTok content nowadays, which is pretty good. I guess I'm doing the Clock app. I also do YouTube in general, which is just DJ Mule, and I cross post. If you don't want to go on the Clock app to check me out, because I know a lot of people have contention on that for some reason, I don't know why. Then you can check me out on YouTube, because I post all of the TikToks that I do on YouTube as well at the same time, so you don't have to you know, you can choose, you can pick and choose where you support me for that kind of content. And of course, don't forget to check out Sophie, Sophie from Mars, just giving her a little shout out in the chat there as well. And of course, our beautiful friend who hasn't been with us because she's away today, Kira Chats as well. You can check her out on Kira Chats, twitch.tv/Kira Chats. We're gonna go and raid somebody now, folks. But I'm a bit unprepared. I don't know who to raid. Hang on a second. Let me just have a little look.
Who we got?
Who is
we got Jim Sterling online. We got yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of not many people I know online, but there's a lot of recommended channels.
Oh, is it?
I don't know if any of them
I'm gonna take a quick look and see if there's someone that
Slime's on.
We could raid Mildred. Yeah, I raid Mildred a fair bit. I'm wondering if we should. Let's go and raid. I tell you what, we're gonna go and raid my friend Mia Byte. She is a great streamer.
You should plug the Patreon.
Oh shit! Thank you, Conrad. Yes, that's a really good
producer's note.
I'm trying to get your attention without, breaking your flow, but I would like to eat.
That's why you're here. Exactly. Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, Conrad is right. We have a Patreon. Holy fucking shit. You've got to go and subscribe to the Patreon because listen, Tim, I don't know if you've joined the amazing new Red Planet Discord.
I have. Yeah. It's actually we just set it up over the last couple of days. So if you are a Patreon member, you should, if you haven't checked your Discord or whatever, you should have access to that now. I think it automatically kind of sucked people through.
Yep.
So you should have the invite. If you haven't, for whatever reason, just let us know. I know the whole system is a little bit, shaky or whatever, but yeah, no. So we're gonna start doing stuff through there, even just kind of being around and chatting and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, Conrad points out if you haven't linked your Discord to your Patreon, then you have to do that, and then you should be able to get the invite.
Yes, there is a link to the Patreon in the chat right now. It's patreon.com/red_planet. We've got 4 tiers for you to choose from. We've got Sprite mode at £2, Goblin mode at £9.50, Beast mode at £19, and finally Sicko mode at £94 a month. These prices all make a lot more sense in dollars. They're a little sort of whatever. It will be different in New Zealand, Aotearoa, and dollars, and literally it'll be different all over the world. But those are the ones.
We're gonna start doing some more, like kind of getting more involved with that sometime soon. Like we've been talking about doing just like little streams that are a little bit more casual, like maybe just with like 1 or maybe 2 of us, just doing the normal kind of thing, but just for kind of like Patreon only. And also just doing things like watching documentaries and stuff. Maybe even like that one that Mule was talking about earlier, Ne Passaran, that would be a cool one. There's a Donna Haraway one I keep mentioning.
Yeah.
That, will definitely be on the agenda. But just stuff like that. So check it out. Subscribe to the Patreon, and so that goes to helping pay Conrad, our producer, who is like always running around behind the scenes doing so much work that like you guys will never even know that he's just like pulling all the strings.
Yeah, literally.
So
and we are getting by the way, we're getting so close to our goal of being able to pay Conrad properly for every episode. I'm actually really buzzing because right now we're at £339 of the goal, which I think if we do the conversion right, hold up a second, the first goal, $400 in pounds. We're here. This is it. Sweet. We've got it. We're literally, oh my God. Yeah, we've got the goal.
We do have to calculate the fees and stuff like that, but
but it's really fucking awesome as well, because that means now that we're on to our next goal of hitting which I think is going to be £900 a month, because that means we're going to be able to hire an editor. Oh, $440. They didn't kind of calculate the transaction fees, right? Okay, so so if I work this out, Regardless, what is $440 in pounds? 358. Okay, so we are literally £5 or something. No, wait, what are we at? So it's 358 and we're at 339. We're literally like £19 away.
Yeah.
From our
So
goal.
super close.
Yeah, so that would just be 2 goblins and a sprite, or 1 beast mode sub. Basically, will get us to our goal of being able to pay Conrad every month. And then we'll be moving on to our next goal of being able to hire an editor, which means, holy fucking shit, we can, start having little clips. We can have like a Red Planet clip channel. We can add more clips to the TikTok. By the way, we are actually on TikTok as well. I should mention that. Is it Red_Planet_TV on TikTok?
Yeah,
I forget.
So Red_Planet_TV.
Yeah.
And, so we're each trying to do one every week. I think we haven't got one from Kira yet, but that'll be soon. But
it'll be soon.
We're
training Kira up on TikTok. She's gonna be killing it by the next time you see her. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, right.
Well,
so
I think that is it.
Yes, I've decided who we're gonna raid. We're gonna raid my friend Mia Bite. She's a great streamer. You'll love her very much. Let me just go back to Twitch and I can tell you what she's playing. She's playing God of War Ragnarok. It's a gaming stream. You're gonna like it, I promise. But yeah, thank you everybody who has been here today, and thank you everybody for supporting us on the Patreon. And also thank you everybody on the YouTube who's watching us
awesome.
and supporting us. So yeah, thank you so much everyone, and we will see you in the next one.
All right, cool.
Bye.
Awesome. We'll see you later.
See ya. And we're off.
We are
Great job.
Oh, thank you.
Really
Yeah.
rolled with the punches there, Mule.
Oh yeah.